The main action of muscle tissue that we think about, of course, is movement. Muscles work together to create movements. The main muscle causing a specific movement is called the prime mover or the agonist. The muscles that oppose this movement are called the antagonist muscles. And the muscles that assist the prime mover are called synergistic muscles. So for example, the biceps shown here in the case of elbow flexion is the prime mover. Some of the synergists would be brachioradialis or brachialis. And triceps would be the antagonist. This is reversed then, of course, for elbow extension, where the triceps are the agonists and the biceps are the antagonists. Muscles hold us in position. They're nearly always contracting at least a little to hold us against gravity. This tone of the muscle, or tonic contraction of the muscle, is what maintains our posture. When you feel a healthy muscle, it feels a little bit firm, and this is what we call normal tone. It's what helps us maintain the positions that we should. On the other hand, high tone is muscles that have become overactive. They're contracting too much, and we refer to these as spastic muscles. This can be seen in people who have had some sort of neurological problem, such as strokes. One way that we can help with this is by firmly and very slowly helping to stretch those spastic muscles until they're able to relax. Low tone, on the other hand, is when someone has what we refer to as flaccid muscles, and the muscle is flabby feeling and very, very weak, perhaps unable to contract at all. And this can also be seen in certain neurologic conditions and muscular diseases. Over time, of course, many people develop poor posture, and this can cause a lot of fatigue in the muscles, as well as lead to deformity of the muscles, the fascial linings of the muscles, and also the skeletal system. Massage can play a really key role in dramatically helping to correct posture, along, of course, with stretching tight muscles and strengthening weak muscles. The way muscles use energy is not very efficient and produces a great deal of heat, which is of course important because it helps us to maintain our body temperatures at the right temperature to allow for the basic chemical reactions and the normal homeostatic processes of our bodies. The more active the muscles are, shows up as more heat, and as you can see on the thermal camera image here, the muscles that are very red are the most active. In fact, muscles are so good at generating heat that when you have a fever, you often shiver, and that's our body's way of helping to increase the body temperature in order to fight off infections. A very important concept to talk about when we're talking about muscle tissue is fatigue. It's a complex topic, and there's so many factors that play a role in muscle fatigue. Part of it is because the muscles run out of chemical ATP, although muscles that have been very tired have been found to still have some ATP. So it's not a complete lack of ATP that causes fatigue. It is also partially because we run out of glucose. Our blood sugar goes down, and that plays a role in fatigue. One of the most important things is that sometimes we contract the muscles, too hard and too fast to get enough oxygen to them to produce the energy that's needed. And as we do this, we go into a different chemical process for producing energy. And that process creates a buildup of what we call lactic acid. So during the exercise period, we may build up quite a bit of lactic acid in the muscle in order to create fast energy that we need immediately. This is called anaerobic because there's no oxygen present in the cell during that time. However, when we stop exercising, we have what we call an oxygen debt that we need to repay. So as we are now breathing and oxygen is getting to the muscle cells as we're resting afterwards, the oxygen does get to the cells and that lactic acid is processed to produce energy in a more normal chemical pattern. We refer to this oxygen debt as part of the fatigue process. So as we exercise strenuously, we build up the lactic acid, and then later on we repay the oxygen debt. This also leads to muscle soreness after strenuous exercise, as most of us have experienced. The lactic acid isn't very comfortable. And massage can play a key role in helping to create better circulation in the muscles to decrease the lactic acid buildup after exercise. So massage plays a big role in helping fatigued muscles to feel better sooner. Every system of the body is interdependent. So we can see that the nervous system is going to affect the muscular system, and vice versa. The digestive system has a role, the cardiovascular system has a role, and the respiratory system has a role, etc., etc. And we can see this most obviously, the interdependence, when we have diseases. And some of the examples given here are multiple sclerosis or hemorrhagic strokes, spinal cord injuries, etc. And we can see detrimental effects in the functioning, very obviously, of the musculoskeletal system. The image you're looking at here shows a single motor unit, and this is a functional unit that is made up of one motor neuron, which is coming from the central nervous system, and then the end of the nerve branches out and touches many muscle cells. It brings the signal to contract from the central nervous system to those specific muscle cells that it comes in contact with. Now, motor units range in size. Some of them only touch 2 or 3 muscle cells, and an example of this would be the very small muscles that control the fine movements of the eye. On the other hand, motor units in, say, the quadriceps muscle of the leg may have hundreds of muscle cells that are innervated by a single motor neuron. So in the eye, we have movements that need to be very precise and specific, so we have small motor units. In the larger muscles of the leg and the glutes, these other muscles, the movements are powerful but not very specific, so we have very large motor units. Again, the components of a motor unit are a single motor neuron coming from the central nervous system and the muscle fibers that it innervates and controls. Muscle cells contract only if the nerve impulse that reaches them is strong enough. This is referred to as the threshold stimulus. If the signal reaches that threshold, all of the muscle fibers in the motor unit will contract. It's an all or none response. Motor units all have a specific and different threshold levels. This enables the muscle to contract with various levels of strength. Only a few motor units contracting in a muscle will be recruited for gentle contractions, where not a lot of strength is required. But for stronger contractions, we recruit more motor units. So the strength of the stimulus will be stronger and more motor units will be incorporated, and the strength of the contraction will be greater. This gives graded force possibilities for each muscle. Here we can see 4 different graphs that talk about muscle contractions and how they work. First graph shows a single stimulus from the motor neuron, and it creates what we call twitch contraction. We have a quick contraction phase and then a relaxation phase. And the muscle would just jerk once or twitch. The second one shows what happens if you have a stimulus and then another stimulus, another stimulus, another stimulus in succession. This is what we call a staircase effect. The initial stimulus creates a minimal contraction, but as we give more and more stimuli in a row here, we get a stronger contraction each time, and we call that a staircase effect. And basically, it's just that enzymes in the muscle get more efficient. It actually warms the muscle up, and so it responds with stronger contractions with subsequent stimuli. The staircase effect. Then the third diagram shows what we call wave summation. So if we increase the frequency of those stimuli coming from the nerve impulse, we don't allow time for the muscle to completely relax between stimulus. And so we get, one contraction, and then before it relaxes, we give it another stimulus, and it continues to contract, and we have what we call wave summation. The fourth diagram shows what really physiologically occurs in our muscles every time we move them. We have very frequent impulses coming in. The first little bit of that graph shows incomplete tetanus, so the frequency is not quite fast enough to create a smooth contraction of the muscle, and we call that incomplete tetanus. The second little part of the graph there shows the frequency of the stimulus being fast enough that there is absolutely no relaxation between the stimuli, and we have a complete tetanus, or a smooth contraction of the muscle. And that's what we normally see physiologically when we move. We don't have this jerkiness to the movements. There's 3 basic types of contractions. The first one illustrated here is a concentric contraction, and that means that the muscle is lifting a load and shortening as it's contracting. The second one is called isometric. Iso means same, metric means distance, so this is the same distance, no change in distance. So as the muscle is contracting, the load is too heavy and it's not able to shorten. So there's no change in the length of the muscle, but it is contracting. So it can develop a lot of force, but no actual movement can occur, and this is because the load is too great. Another type, not illustrated here, is called an eccentric contraction. An eccentric contraction actually causes the muscle to lengthen as it's contracting. So an example of this would be as if you're trying to put down something heavy but it's fragile. You don't want to drop it, so you want to control the lowering and you want to have it, touch softly down. So the muscle is contracting, but it's lengthening at the same time. And this actually tears the muscle up quite a bit. As you can imagine, the actin and myosin are trying to bind, but they're actually being pulled apart at the same time. So eccentric contractions actually cause a little bit more microscopic damage to the muscles and more muscle pain afterwards. So, for example, if you've gone hiking and you've gone downhill for a long time, you'll notice that the next day you'll be a lot more sore than perhaps even if you'd been climbing uphill. And that's because it involves more eccentric contractions. Exercise is a really important thing to keep muscles healthy. It improves the tone, the posture, the circulation, and benefits most of the other, all the other systems of the body. Muscles are affected very much by the types of exercise that we perform. They morph, they change in order to more efficiently perform the routine activities that they engage in. So regular heavy exercise, like weight training, which is anaerobic, will cause hypertrophy of the muscles. Here we're trying to create greater and greater force, so we build more and more myofilaments into each muscle cell. And we don't actually increase the number of muscle cells, but make each individual cell larger. And that's where bodybuilders get these large muscles. On the other hand, endurance sports, such as running, marathons, that sort of thing, we don't need bigger muscles because the load isn't necessarily that large with each repetitious activity. On the other hand, we need muscles that don't fatigue quickly. So the muscle cells actually increase the number of mitochondria that they have in each cell, which helps to produce more and more ATP and makes the muscle more efficient and slower to fatigue. So these long, lean muscles that don't fatigue easily are the result of endurance training. Of course, doing no exercise at all leads to atrophy of the muscles. If you don't use it, you lose it, and our bodies are very efficient. They don't hang on to anything that they're not using. So muscles can atrophy very quickly in terms of disuse or lack of heavy exercise. The rest of the slides that are in your book have been covered in the lecture, and we're not going to cover them here on YouTube. Have a great day. Thanks for your time.